Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee of August 12th, 2021. The time is 11:02. And roll call, just who's here. We've got our Tourism Director, Laura Padette.
Here.
Sue Brayton. Okay. Eric Lowell.
Here.
Welcome. Our guest speaker, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm going down my order because I don't have my big screen. Stephanie Lyle.
Here.
James Curran.
Here.
Thank you. And Warren Zimmerman.
Here.
And Ginny Wellman.
Here.
Thank you. And our City Clerk, Josh Stecker.
I'm here.
And Mayor Kik-Yoon. So we'll review and approve our July minutes. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any questions?
Just to note, we have two sets of minutes to approve. We have the regular meeting on July 8th, and then also the special meeting on July 22nd.
Okay.
We also have our interim city administrator, Tony Piasecki, joining us.
I was having technical difficulties, but I figured it out.
No worries. Good to have you here. Okay, well, we're asked to approve the July minutes first. Do I have a motion to approve the July minutes?
I move to approve the July minutes.
Right. There's a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Who was second? I'm so sorry.
That was me,
James.
Warren.
James was the second.
No.
Perfect. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Nay. Abstain. Minutes approved for July. And Laura, was the other one June?
No, it was July 22nd special meeting.
Okay, I'd like to. Are there any questions on the special meeting of July? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the July special meeting?
I make a motion to approve the special meeting for July.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
James, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Come on, everyone, say okay. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. Great, and welcome, Eric. We're very happy and honored to have Eric Lowell from the MRSC doing the presentation on LTAC grant directives and other questions that we may have on our lodging tax advisory for Gig Harbor, which is guidelined by the MRSC with giving us good guidelines that cities use throughout Washington. So welcome, Eric. We're happy to have you here.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, let me go here. Share, we'll do that. Okay, now we've got to go to here. Go slideshow. Okay.
This coffee is really good.
Okay. There we go. So today I'm going to be talking about lodging taxes and LTAC. I am Eric. Oh,
the screen doesn't show your presentation.
It's not showing my presentation.
Well, it shows it says join a conversation. It shows the nice, beautiful picture, but it's in the small of the big Zoom thing.
I think you might just need to select another screen.
So let me see.
It's not as robust as it could be, I guess.
Okay, let me try.
I think it actually might just be the wrong screen. I think
let's try this. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I picked the right one. Sorry, I have to do like a remote desktop and my regular computer, so that's probably what's causing the problem. So my name is Eric Lowell. I am a finance consultant, or the finance consultant, I guess there's only one of me, at MRSC. I started at MRSC December 1st of last year. Before that, I worked for the Timberland Regional Library District, which was a 5-county Library District, covering Thurston, Mason, Lewis, Grays Harbor, and Pacific counties. And then before that, I worked at the city of Lakewood. So MRSC, before I got to MRSC, I used MRSC all the time for the great resources online. Unfortunately, when I was at the library district, we couldn't get the one-on-one consulting because we weren't a city or a county and we didn't have a contract, but I could still access all of the great resources online. But cities and counties can get one-on-one consultation. You can submit questions through our online portal or call us up, or you can email me if you have a finance question. So lodging taxes, all taxes are authorized through statute. So the lodging taxes are authorized through RCW 6828-180 and 6728-181. Some revenues, some taxes are unrestricted, lodging taxes are restricted, and those revenues must generally be spent on tourism. Let me try to move this over a little more. On tourism activities and tourism related facilities. Cities that have populations of 5,000 or more must establish a lodging tax advisory committee, which you all know as LTAC, to review funding applications and recommend awards to the city council. Lodging tax revenues can be awarded to nonprofits, tourism organizations, and to the city itself for those activities associated with tourism facilities and tourism promotion. All recipients, including the city, must apply for lodging tax funding.
Eric, would you like us to hold our questions till the end, or would you like us to maybe ask on topic?
I can go either way. If you have questions, I don't mind being interrupted.
If people could write them down, and there's a good chance that he could cover them, and if they write them down, then we can let him complete his presentation.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds good. Alrighty, so uses of lodging tax. Lodging taxes must be used for tourism promotion, acquiring tourism-related facilities, or operations of tourism-related facilities. So these could include tourism marketing and operations of special events and festivals that are designed to attract tourists to your city, operations and capital expenditures of tourism related facilities owned or operated by the city. So we're going to see a difference here between what the city can do, eligible expenses for city, as opposed to someone who is not the city receiving these funds. So the city can use it for operations and capital expenditures of tourism related facilities. For agencies outside of the city, they can only use it for operations. They cannot use it for capital expenditures or improvements. Eligible applicants. So entities that may apply for lodging tax funding are typically convention and visitors bureaus, destination marketing organizations, nonprofits, including Main Street organizations, lodging associations or chambers of commerce, and municipalities, so the city. For the application of awards, applications must include how the funding activity will result in an increase to the number of people staying overnight, traveling 50 miles or more, or coming from another state or country. And that is in RCW 6828-1861, Section 2A. This required information should be included. This is what MRSC recommends, that you include this requirement on your form, your lodging tax application form, to ensure compliance with the statutory requirement. Priority need not be given to applicants expected to generate the largest number of tourists. So that's not you don't have to make a decision on who's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck or whatever. The cities must follow the same application procedures as nonprofits and other organizations that are applying for the funds. LTAC, the LTAC committee receives the applications for the lodging tax revenue, and then they are the the body that recommends who should be funded and the funding levels that they should receive. They give those recommendations to City Council for final determination. City Council can only select from recipients from the list of candidates recommended and the amounts provided by LTAC. So the city can't turn around and say, we don't like any of these people, but we want to give money to this group. It has to be someone from the list by LTAC. And again, there's the statutory RCW 68281816 2B section 2. City Council is not required to fund the full list, so they can just do, you know, a few of them or most of them, but they can also choose not to fund any. They can just say, we don't like any of these, we're not going to fund any of them. But again, they can't say, but we would like to fund this one. It has to be someone on that list. The City Council can choose different award amounts, but if they want to do that, they must submit the changes that they're proposing in those dollar funds to the LTAC committee, and then to give them at least 45 days to comment and review those proposed changes before any final action is taken. And again, the LTAC can come back and say, no, we really think it should be this amount. But once you've submitted it, your proposed changes, and you've given 45 days, you can go with the amount that the council can go with the amount that they choose. And then the law is silent on the frequency of awards. So some organizations do it once a year. Some people do it in January, and then in the summer. You can choose to do however you would like in terms of the frequency. And so with the lodging tax revenues, you need to report annually to JLARC, which is the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee. And JLARC requires that you report all lodging tax revenues that are received, and then all lodging tax revenues that you've distributed or expended, and then all receipts of lodging tax monies, including the city itself, that may have directly used lodging tax funds for qualifying facilities, tourist events, or tourism administration. And then for all recipients, you need to include the actual number of people traveling for business or pleasure on an overnight trip and paid accommodations, traveling 50 or more miles away from their business or place of residence for the day or overnight, or traveling from another state or country. So again, this is an annual report that is required by the statute to go. Do I have that on here? No, I don't have that listed. But it's required annually to be reported. I think it's May 15th is the date, it has to be reported by May 15th. Oh, there it is, RCW 67281816. And that's all I've got. That's you know, a basic overview of the statute and the requirements. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing here.
Great.
I'm going to start with one. Eric, can we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes, totally.
That'd be amazing.
Thank you very much, Eric. Yeah. If you would send that to probably Laura, and then Laura can distribute it. I appreciate it too. Thank you very much, Eric. Okay, I'm going to ask people to have questions. Yes, Councilmember. I'm sorry, Ginny Wellman.
Hi. Thanks very much, Eric. That was informative. So can you tell me how you define a tourism organization or destination marketing organization?
So the statute doesn't give like specific examples, but I think you can look to, is it an organization that their primary focus is getting people to travel to a location?
Eric, can I also, our GMOs are mostly tourist offices and nonprofits, correct?
Pardon?
GMOs, destination marketing organizations, are most frequently like tourist boards or convention and visitors bureaus, and typically a nonprofit organization, yes?
Typically, yes.
Can they be for-profit entities ever?
Our guidance has been that it doesn't restrict it to strictly nonprofit. The only time nonprofits are it's restricted is if you are giving money towards operations of a non-city owned facility. It has to be owned or run by a nonprofit. So in that case, if someone's applying for money that's related to operations of a facility, it has to be owned or run by a nonprofit. And it is explicit about that in the RCW.
So essentially we could, sorry, may I ask a follow-up there? So essentially we could award a grant to a for-profit organization that was functioning as a DMO or a tourist focused organization, but not necessarily a for-profit event operator that has a structure that they wanted funding for.
Yeah, a for-profit event operator. Yeah, because you know.
Here's an example. Let's say that someone has a boat service and they have tour boats out of Gig Harbor, and they bring, you know, they have boats that go out and let people tour around the Narrows or around Gig Harbor and back, but they're for profit. You're saying they have to be attached to a nonprofit to have that happen?
So for the operations of their, for the, if it's operations of I would assume the boat is being considered a facility. You know, it could, if they're having like a special event or something that's meant to draw a bunch of people, that would be allowed. But just for them as a business, like just because they do that, I would be cautious about that.
Can I ask a little clarifying question there?
Yeah.
So let's say we can't award funds to a boat operator for maintenance of their boat or upkeep of their boat.
Correct.
But we could give them money for tourism marketing costs for an event that they throw that brings people out of town from out of town.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, so because we have like a gondola person in town, we've got people that run boats going out for this. We've got, you know, other things. I mean, let's say our trolley service, which is Pierce County, was a private organization, but it, you know, so as long as they could ask for grants for advertising towards their item. Is that correct?
It's for an event or a festival.
Okay.
That's typically what funds are awarded for, is related to a specific event that's going to draw people to your city.
Okay, for overnight stays usually.
Yeah, overnight stays, yeah.
You're right, sorry, because that's, I knew that, I'm going to let Tony comment in a minute, but a couple of follow-up questions like what we're talking about. So would nonprofits have to do the same? It's not for ongoing expenses of nonprofits. Then it would be for events that nonprofits would do. If because you said that's the only way a for-profit could do it, if it was a special event.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be treated the same on all the grants?
Because nonprofits can also use it towards the operations of their facilities. Okay.
And then the state had eased up on the requirements of overnight stay, you know, about 5 years ago. That information you said makes it seem like they have to provide realistic proof that they're bringing people in. Is that true? Is that correct?
I mean, the statute has not changed. It has not been modified. And so that it still reads that way.
Okay.
So this is part of our, go ahead, Mayor.
It has to be tied toward, I thought it had changed so it has to be tied towards overnight lodging.
I don't know if it specifically has to, but you need to list how many people are coming for an overnight stay, traveling more than 50 miles, or from out of the state or out of the country. I don't know how strict they are on how much you have to have, or if you can put 0 in that, but I know you have to report those things.
I will say that this is part of our data and geofencing that we will help our collectors with. We will take a look at how many people visited for example, Uptown for the Gig Harbor Film Festival, and how many people also stayed at Best Western or Maritime Inn or RV Park or, you know, a VRBO.
Okay, Tony,
Sorry,
you had a question?
Yeah. With the grant recommendations from the LTAC to the council, let's say there are 10 applicants and LTAC recommends 5 of them receive funding. Can the council say, we agree with 4 of those 5, but the 5th one we're not going to award, we're going to go to one that you didn't recommend?
No, they can't.
They cannot do that?
No, it has to be your recommendation. It's not that who applied, it's who they recommend.
Okay.
So only those ones that they recommend can they choose from.
Okay. That's a very important point.
Right, but they could change one of those or many of those if they do it within 45 days. First, they go to LTAC within 45 days, right?
That's just for changing the amount of the funds.
Right.
But they have to do that prior to like voting on it at council.
Correct.
Right.
They would have to give their proposal to the LTAC committee saying this is what we think it should be changed to. And I don't know if you have to include a justification, but it probably would be good to include a justification. And then you need to give them 45 days to review that and respond from when they receive it. So that's the soonest you could vote on it.
So, okay, so they each gets 40, they have to do it within 45 days of voting, and then they have to give them a 45 days to review it and before they make their own decision.
So I don't know what the procedure is for the LTAC committee making the like how long you guys have to review it or whatever. But once you've reviewed it and you say, we want to make this change, here LTAC, here's the change. Once that we're proposing, they have 45 days to review and get their thing. And then as soon as that 45 days is up, you can vote, that next day.
Thank you. Jenny.
I have lots of questions, but I'll limit it to this one for now, because I think some of them may get answered by other people too. So is there any sort of formal annual report that you require for the grantees to send in, or is that up to the LTAC committee to come up with that?
They're going to need to send their information to Laura, because Laura has to submit her report by May 15th to JLARC. So hopefully they get it to her before May 14th.
So what if the event happens after May 14th?
Oh, it's for the previous year,
It's for the previous year. It's the
Okay.
The calendar year before, you have until May 15th of the next year to get that report filed.
Okay, so second thing is then, so it sounds like the city is required to state how much they've taken in LTAC funds and how much they've spent in LTAC funds.
Yes. As well as so not only because the city can spend money, and the cities can also use, if they have someone on staff that is administering it, their time can be charged to LTAC for those funds. But yeah, so not only what the city itself spends, but what it gives out and gets spent by the grantees. Or I
think I can further
the bulk of the money. I mean, so the money that's coming in is mostly being spent either by the city for their tourism related work, as well as grant money that's being spent.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
So, Jenny, typically the process is that we require everyone to submit their reports by the end of the year, so that I have time to compile that report in total. I also include what the city has spent in a budgeted amount per. And that's the kind of the number that you saw us going through on the year-to-date cost. And I'll submit that May 15th for the year-to-date in total. So 2021. And then I'm also here to help our receivers with those reports so that they have, and that's why we give it such a wide window. They can reach out to me, say, I need help with these numbers. I don't know how many people came in or did this, and I will help with that,
So 2 questions, since I don't see others. Can more than, let's say, I thought that, could a nonprofit apply for more? They can apply for more than one grant. They could just be for various different things.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, they could apply for more than one grant, or they could include two different things in the same grant.
Right. Okay. And you know, what if Gig Harbor wants to promote tourism? And a lot of times, if people come here locally, you say within 50 miles, you know, we have a lot of tourism that applies from people that live 10 miles away, and then they bring in other people from outside. Because, you know, I mean, we have our concerts. The city is not going to do this for their concerts, but it brings in a lot of people. Can we fund local tourism under 50 miles? Let's say we say, you know, because a lot, again, if they spend money in our town, or they have friends that stay at places, can we fund kind of local tourism that are, you know, that would be agencies doing an event under 50 miles?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is tourism, and tourism usually, you know, implies a distance as opposed to local. It's not to say you can't find a way to, you know, market to them as well. But your focus, like I said, the intent of the legislation is, you know, 50 miles or more.
Right.
And Eric, I just want to maybe capitalize on something you said earlier. Is that these applications don't necessarily need to be tied to the exact number of people they bring in by saying we think this is going to be the biggest. So if we have something that may be a big local draw and may also have people bringing family in from 20 miles away or 30 miles away to book a hotel room or something like that, that could be something that we consider, yes?
Yeah.
Right. Because like Seattle is almost probably getting close to 50 miles. Probably just shy of it, but then you have a lot of people that are going to come to an event, but they're not going to drive home, just like I wouldn't want to do the other thing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I have. Oh.
Go ahead, Laura. I can go next.
I have two. I think we maybe doubled up on one, but I just wanted to take two real life examples and that we've had concerns about over the past year. And the first is we had an application for something like $5,000 in landscaping for a local sportsman's club, which can be a tourism draw, but also that's not a direct correlation necessarily to bringing in new people if they properly landscape their facility. And that's something that we went back and forth on. Initially, we approved it. We looked back through the regulations and found that that's probably outside of our scope. Can you answer a little bit of that? And then I have another real life scenario too.
To me, that would fall under a capital expenditure or, you know, improvement. And so that would not be an eligible, because you're improving their property. And so that's not owned by the city. If it was the city, I would say you could, but it's not the city's property.
Thank you. And yeah, you just confirmed it, city. Yep.
The real life application is, I think the for-profit one was a big question. We currently have put together a scope of applications that is designed to increase the amount that we give out to our nonprofits and our area businesses. What we have right now is an allocation of about 25% of our total annual budget that would go specifically to LTAC grants. We also have a mechanism in place to put a $20,000 grant cap on each application in order to diversify the amount that we can give, as well as ensure that we're funding a variety of new and existing projects. You've mentioned previously that one entity can put forward multiple applications. So in essence, or in theory, you could have one, even with that grant cap, you can have one organization that gets $60,000 for 3 different projects. But is there anything we need to be concerned about there?
So MRC is typically recommended that you shouldn't be placing caps on what people can apply for. Because really you want to encourage people coming forth with ideas for tourism for your city. And again, you don't have to accept them. You know, if it's too high and you're like, we don't want to the LTAC committee says, we don't think it's prudent to give this much of money to this one person. We'd like to see it going to more people that maybe overall would draw more than that one person. But you don't want to discourage people from applying for it, or because it's kind of like you're kind of restricting who can apply for it by putting those caps on there. So
a question on that then, though. We're a small city, and you know, we did have several years ago someone basically almost wipe out. You know, they were going to do hundreds of thousands of dollars towards one thing, and it was going to just drain our funds to where. And one thing we found as a small city that if we give to say 3 to 5 projects, we have a better spread, especially with COVID and with whatever happens. We have a better chance of maybe creating tourism because we're not putting all of our money in one basket.
Exactly.
But we also, it gets political. So we also have council or places that can get involved in it. And then before you know it, you know, we've shut out a lot of places. So even though you said you may not think it's a good idea, it also depends on the size of your town or things that I'm telling you. So do we still have the option though of doing caps?
First of all, I don't believe there was drama at a city council meeting.
Right.
You know, I don't see anything that says you can't restrict it in the RCW, but I also don't see anything saying that you can or can't. It's kind of silent on that. But I think the ultimate goal is to you know, foster diverse ideas about tourism and about how to increase tourism to your city. So again, I see that. I totally understand the, you know, if someone puts in a big one and they get turned down and they hear that the rationale was, well, we want, you know, more, you know, we want to not have all of our eggs in one basket. I can see, you know, wanting to avoid that.
Right. Okay. I'm going to jump to Sue for a minute so that we're all equal.
I'm just saying, as an LTAC committee, it sounds pretty simple though. I mean, when we got the huge one for the boat, you know, we just all said, oh, that doesn't make sense. So I don't think we need to keep a cap. Is it sounding like that isn't the best way to go? It's pretty simple. We have, sounds like, pretty much control over how much we decide to give to one.
Again, we can always decide another amount. So if they come with a $300,000 ask, we can always say, no, we don't think that's a good idea, but we can allocate 15 to 20,000 to it, or 30,000, and then put it forward to council. They can come back and say, actually, we think the full 300, and we can say, nope, that's not our recommendation. So they don't have the ability to go forward with that 300,000 if this committee says
it's not gonna, we didn't have it before, and I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, and the other thing with that too is, you know, some people, you know, are going to shoot for the moon in terms of what they want, but they would probably be happy to get something.
Right. Stephanie.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions also. One along those lines is, if there is a cap placed on the grant program and the city has to apply just like everyone else, are they subject to that cap as well?
Yes.
Okay. So the other part of that question, and I want to make a comment here too, is that we're putting a lot of emphasis on one application that happened a couple years ago that really is, the ask was for city property. So, you know, it's not an invalid ask by the rules of the MRSC, as I understand it. You know, and Eric, just for clarification, we have a number of nonprofits that program city property. And so the property is owned by the city, but the nonprofit, you know, does the public programming and tourism related programming. So when they make an ask, I mean, and we didn't really have the clarification at that time to know the difference between what could be funded from a capital point of view as a city property versus something that was that nonprofit.
Yeah, if it's city property and a nonprofit is running it, capital expenditures you can totally do.
So, follow-up question just quickly on that, and then Stephanie, I'm going to throw it back to you. So under the 4 columns that LTAC funds can apply to, 3 are administered by the city. And that is what we put together a budget for essentially each year, including the amount of LTAC funds. What we're hoping to do is to find equal representation in those 4 quadrants and put together 25% of each quadrant for our budget. So while $125,000 is allocated right now this year of our budget for specifically LTAC grants for external sources, the other 75%, which should essentially add up to what, 350 or 375 for a total of about 500. That typically is outside of a specific grant cap. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that the city would only get a total of $20,000 for staffing, administrative expenses, DMO expenses, and capital expenditures on projects. But there is a directive that we are working to follow to spend equally in those 4 approved categories. So that cap in total, I can understand. I want to just clarify that language there too.
Well, and I have to say, Laura, I mean, I watched the video from that particular meeting where it was the 25, 25, 25, and there wasn't really a lot of discussion about how those percentages were arrived at. And there weren't very many LTAC advisory committee members actually there. I don't want to really get into that with, taking Eric's time to discuss that in great detail, but I did think it was kind of an interesting allocation. So it would be helpful for us to understand how much money can the city actually apply to administrative costs and a reserve versus what gets distributed for actual nonprofit and apparently for-profit and municipal tourism support.
I would say I think there isn't a rule that says all the funds collected have to be spent in that same year. Yes, Eric?
Correct.
Okay. And ideally what this structure would look like and what this would go toward is equally funding the 4 things that are supposed to drive tourism to Gig Harbor so that we're not ignoring one category. For example, we were massively underspending in DMO categories for a long time. 4.8% of our budget was going toward DMO costs. So we want to see those equal representations because we believe that each one of those quadrants has specific value. So on the question on reserve, and I guess that kind of answers that, but that reserve essentially you could have, if we don't spend money on capital expenditures one year and we have $125,000 sitting there, we could essentially use that for a $250,000 allocation in 2022, for example. And that's kind of the idea there behind the reserve as well, is that money is a little fluid and structured. And we also want to keep an eye on what's coming in versus what's going out.
Okay, I'm going to jump to Josh for a sec. Josh?
Oh, I just wanted to follow up on that and just remember that our LTAC funding is reactive to whatever we get grant applications for. So the 25% number is going to fluctuate just entirely based on how many applications we get. So if we only get $60,000 in nonprofit grants awarded, that means the city is only coming out of this year with $180,000 to spend. So it's an ideal to aspire to possibly, but the only way we can do that is just by reacting to what we actually get applications for.
Right.
And that's why we're going to encourage it so highly.
Eric, we didn't have as many applications last year, so we opened up a second round to be able to allow people to spend it to apply again for the same time.
Yeah, and that's
Ginny. Go ahead, Ginny.
So I was not at that special meeting. Can you tell me what these 4 quadrants are?
Eric, do you actually want to cover that? And that's part of the presentation, yeah?
So are you talking about the tourism promotion, the events and festivals, the capital and operating expenditures for municipal facilities, and then operations of nonprofit facilities?
And that's under the statute. The 4 approved ways to spend this, yes.
Laura, I don't think those are the 4 quadrants that you put out the special meeting.
Sorry, I think I might have used a different terminology there. I used GMO.
One of the quadrants was just for nonprofits, which covers, I think, 2 or 3 of those areas.
Covers grants, essentially.
The quadrants, I think, were nonprofit grants, city staff time,
administrative,
and then city marketing, and then city capital projects. So they're similar, but not really aligned with the 4.
Right, and city staff and administrative essentially covers DMO costs and management of a tourism office.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Eric.
I just asked
okay.
before
Hang on.
Okay. All right. I didn't see any hands, and
I know Sue has a question too.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, keep his time to a minimum too. I know we have other things to talk about, but I just want to clarify. So when we give our recommendations to the city council for approval, they can say no to an amount and then bring it back to us, correct? But they cannot add any new thoughts or ideas, projects. Am I correct?
No, like literally, you're the one that brings them the suggested recipients, correct. And then whatever you choose, the only thing they can do from that point on is change the amount. Say they want to change the amount of awarded money.
Correct. Okay. Sorry, because I think that happened one other time where something else came on that they wanted to do, and so anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. And then can you clarify on the number of people on the committee and that kind of thing, or are you just the financial portion?
So how many people should be on the committee? Correct.
And can we take a vote? Can we actually have a meeting if there's only 2 collectors and all the rest are receivers?
I don't. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to get back off, get onto my remote desktop. Hold on just a second. Let me do this. Okay, here we go. Oh no, I did not want to do that. Dang, I just shut my internet that had
okay.
The RCW.
And maybe we could talk about that at a different time. Those are questions more. I mean, this was all really helpful, but those are some things too. And then the way we have to choose who's on there now, the city council they have to apply and they have to talk to us. Is that the city's decision, you guys, or was that something that's that we have to do per their regulations? That's all I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, so, okay, really so hard. Here, the LTAC must be appointed by the city council and must contain at least 5 members, including 1 elected city official who serves as the chair, at least 2 representatives of business that are required to collect the lodging tax, and at least 2 people who are involved in activities that are authorized to be funded by the lodging tax.
Okay, so 2 of each, 2 collectors, 2 receivers, 1 administrator is all that's required?
Required, correct.
Okay, and then the rest is up to the city council, or who is it up to?
Yeah, the city council can determine how many they want on the committee.
Okay.
So just to clarify, that's for creating the roster of who's on the committee. Once that roster is established, then it's just normal quorum rules. So if you have a meeting with the mayor and 4 receivers, that's a quorum of LTAC. So you don't have to have even amount of collectors and receivers at a specific meeting to take action.
No, that's just something the city. Go ahead.
Are there term limits for people that sit on the committee?
There aren't.
Okay. Clarifying question on, typically what we've done with the grants is we've made it so that when council has actually looked at, the council hears from various departments of what they want to spend.
Yeah.
And so when they hear from tourism, that's part of tourism budget. So we've put the grants in when council listens to that. So they listen to that. And then about a month later, or 2 months later, they vote on all their budget for the whole year. That's when they would actually vote on the LTAC, and they would vote on anything else. So if we do it the same way, which only makes sense without having the special LTAC grants go separately than the budget to council, if we, before they vote on the LTAC grants, the council would have to, you know, as a body, say, okay, we've sat in on that department, we've seen the grants, we think the grants should be something different. They'd have to do that 45, you know, they'd have to voice that 45 days early than when they vote on it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so just so everyone's aware, what we do is we take our grants, you know, when these grants come in, we'll finish the grants, and then Laura gives her budget to council in work study sessions like everyone else, and then in there are those grants. So if the council wants to change that, they'll have to do that before they vote on the budget in late November or December. Which gives them months of time, but I'm just letting everyone understand that that's how we do it and how it still solidifies the 45 days prior to the vote. Stephanie.
Yes, I have two questions for Eric. Is there any guidance from MRSC on how a grant program is supposed to be publicized or put on the website, or is there anything that is required?
There's no guidance on how to do that. You know, most of if the RCWs have anything to say about publishing stuff, it's usually like in a local newspaper with a certain advance notice before like things are due. But you know, I think just whatever ways you get, you know, you find that are effective for your city to get information out to the community, I think is going to be the best way. I mean, social media is probably going to be the top way to do it. I don't know many people that, you know, get the paper delivered anymore. So.
Yeah, well, and website is helpful too. So
yeah, definitely.
But the other question I have is there any recommendation or guidance on how much of the fund it should be spent out? You know, for example, if you've collected $500,000 in a year, do you have to spend, I know you don't have to spend the 500,000, but do you have to spend 75% of that, or can you just hold the whole thing in your back pocket?
So technically you could hold it all in your back pocket, but that doesn't look good. So typically, I mean, the you know, you have flexibility. You don't have to spend it all in 1 year. And it just depends on the situation, you know, what's going on in your city. You know, there could be a reason where you want to hold on to some money. I don't think like spending a lot of money on tourism promotion last year would have been, you would have gotten a lot of bang for your buck. So, you know, obviously you'd be like, okay, we're just going to not, you know, do anything this year because we're probably not going to have a lot of tourism. But we're going to save it so we can, you know, the next year we can really boom, like get the word out and hopefully attract a lot of people to our city. So, and it could be, you know, there could be other things where you're like, okay, well, we'd like to do some remodeling of one of our buildings. So we're going to save some of this. We're not going to spend all the money this year, and we'll, you know, use that next year with the new money you come in. You know, there could be other situations where you think, well, we're probably going to have lower revenue coming in, so we probably might want to be conservative this year, and hopefully next year revenues will be up and we can increase what we're going to spend. But there really is no guidance. You just don't want to be holding all of it, you know.
Yeah.
It looks bad, because then people will be like, well, then why are you collecting the tax if you're not spending it?
Jenny.
Right, and using it for the intention that it was meant for. So, okay, go ahead, Jenny.
So,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you done, Stephanie?
If you have another
yeah.
question.
Are you sure? Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm back to this 25% thing. 25% of what?
The budget.
What is the budget? Is that the current year's?
The budget for the coming year.
Earnings?
So let's say we get applications in the fall, late summer through early fall for 2022 LTAC grants. We put out as much as possible, and we spend that $125,000 and allocate it as much as possible. That means the $125,000 that we have given to for now also for-profit businesses and nonprofits for tourism related activities then comprises 25% of our total budget. So that would cap us out essentially at like $375,000 for our expenses.
Okay, it just seems to me like we're really zeroing in on $125,000 for grants.
Just because that's the amount that we gave last year.
Right, we can have a budget that's greater than that, right? Because we do have some money in reserve. So it just seems weird that we would choose a 25% amount.
Well, okay, so this is not for Eric's time in a way. It's just told us that we can choose our own amount, so we can save this for after.
Sure. And I'm happy to discuss it further, but yes, I do want to be considerate of Eric's time. Are there any other questions for Eric?
Stephanie.
I think that the most important thing is to understand not only what can and can't be spent, and this is for Eric, but how much of a budgeted amount. You know, if we bring in $500,000 and we spend $100,000, you know, my point was, is there any rule or regulation in this at the state level that says that a certain amount has to be spent? Because obviously, no. Okay.
And I do want to say we did increase about $100,000 over the past year as over 2019 spend. So that was something like $22,000. And I think this is a very, very valid part of our tourism expenses. And we want to see that money out there working. And I think we've covered this a time or two, but if we see the increased demand, then we can also take a look at that amount and make that a little bit more fluid. But as with last year, it was really hard to get that first $75,000. And we had to go out with a second call to spend that extra $50,000. So as we start to see the increased demand, I think we can take a look at it in the future too. The $125,000 has been just given as a guideline as that it was an amount that was difficult for us to spend and difficult to get like more people to apply for this past year, but it functioned well. So starting point. And again, I don't want to see us give out only $22,000 of the fund. That's not what it's intended for, in my mind, at least. We should be spending equally in for categories. And work for us. About 4 years ago, we were giving out a lot less than $125 per year. So we've actually increased that a lot since I've been mayor from what it used to be. So can we promote businesses that are right outside the city? So we have a tough boundary, Eric. If you go 10 minutes in one direction, you're in the city. If you go 2 minutes away from the city hall, you're in another direction, you're in the county. And so I mean, really, literally, you know, half a mile from City Hall it's that way. So if the Tacoma Narrows Airport does a air show, and yet they bring in people. So there's all sorts of things that, you know, we're twice as busy during the day because everyone comes into our town. So if they're right outside of our city limits, but they promote overnight lodging in Gig Harbor with their events, promotes all of Gig Harbor, you're still able to give to those causes, correct?
I believe so. I know in looking through our research database, there was a question relating to city limits. So I can, when I email Laura my PowerPoint, I can give you a definitive answer for that. But I would think so, because ultimately, you know, there's not hotels at the airport, you know, it's the hotels are in Gig Harbor. There's no hotels on Fox Island. I used to live there. And so I know that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't the county cover that for LTAC?
That is a good question. Because
I was told once that we have members who are outside the city that run B&Bs. And I was told that the county has responsibility for collecting taxes similar to the way that the city does, and that people in the county can apply for those.
You're right. You're right. They do. And they do. Yeah.
I guess that's just such an interesting question. And Eric, I guess we'll wait for you for further information on.
Again, trying to
because
get
there's
downtown.
not that many county hotels. I mean, there are county vacation rentals, which are valid.
Yeah.
But as far as, yeah.
But also trying to get a downtown LTAC group of Tacoma to support something across the bridge, and our little, right, is going to be a far cry from us are doing it ourselves.
Yeah. I will say though, Blue is on that LTAC committee for Pierce County, so he represents.
Oh, he is.
Yes. And actually,
he'll get a
plug in. Apply for both. You can apply for a county LTAC grant as well as a city LTAC grant.
Because remember,
that is possible. It is possible.
That event that's coming this year, didn't he apply for both, and I think we gave him some money.
Josh.
Okay.
Well, I just had a procedural question while we have Eric. Every year, it seems like it comes up, when we review our grants, some of the recipients that sit on our board are actually, they actually have grants that we're reviewing. Mm-hmm. Do you know, is it appropriate for them to vote on their own grants, or should they recuse themselves? Or I think typically we make them recuse themselves every year.
I think there's nothing in the statute that says they're not allowed to. But I think optics, I think it would be good optics if they didn't vote, if they're related to that, if they have a relation to the grantee, or they're part of it.
Thank you. Yes, Stephanie.
Question for Eric. Do you have any idea who establishes the rules and regulations for LTAC? Like, this requirement for the numbers of, how many people stay overnight and all that stuff, because for some of us, it's almost impossible to know. I run a museum, and it's almost impossible to know whether someone is actually staying overnight or not. But who sets up those rules?
I say that all the time when I read the RCWs. If someone put this up in committee and they thought that these were good requirements and it passed. I don't know that there are a lot of times I'm like, who did this? What were they thinking? This makes no sense. But I couldn't tell you who exactly came up with it, but
do they ever review it each year?
No. Before I got to MRSC, I didn't really spend a lot of time in the RCWs, and I can just tell you, it's just very frustrating not seeing consistency and just seeing things that really. So yeah, I don't think they renew it unless someone makes a big stink. I think they just leave things as they are.
And I will say, Stephanie, we can help you with that too with our geofencing software. We can get a more exact number rather than a guesstimate this year. So,
okay. You probably have to have a lot of cities petition AWC and then get a body to change the rules.
Well, I don't know this. I was shocked this year in the session that who was it? The Parks District on Vashon Island got them to change the RCW just for them in the whole state. And I was like, they must have had a good advocate for them, because it only impacts them, no one else.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you for having me. And
thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. This has been very, very helpful in clarifying our direction.
All right, you're welcome. And I'll send you the PowerPoints and what I find out from researching that question on the county.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah, you'd think the body would get together, once a year, and it's probably decided in King County. So their needs are a lot different sometimes than the rest.
It's an RCW, Mayor. It's the state legislature.
Okay, well, probably. Okay. Before we go on to the overview update, any last wrap up from this? Okay, Laura, I'll let you do the overview updates.
Sure. So 2021 Visitors Guide, that is the print edition, has been received. We still have some issues with distribution. It is not on ferries this year. It is not at the Port of Seattle. I don't know the total number that was printed, but I have some pretty grave concerns on if it's going to last the year. We have maybe about 4 boxes left as a city for allocation. So a little concerned about how that's going to go. I did want to give some good news, and I mentioned this right before we started recording, but our IT department has helped me out this past week, and we've shifted Gig Harbor Guide over to visitgigharborwa.com. It is still password protected at this moment, but it includes a really beautiful visual representation of who we are as a city, a really great, fully fleshed out event calendar by month. I'm proud of it. There's a great meetings page. We've got a little bit more than just a stagnant list. We've got a great blog from people around the city doing guest invites. For example, the woman who owns Gig Harbor Candy Company put together a list of the best desserts in Gig Harbor and where to find them. So working on a little bit more personalized content that will drive people to our site. And Stephanie, I just saw the film festival's video on Thunderbird, and I would love to do a blog on that. So that's up next in my hopper on a blog post. But I'd also just encourage this group, if you find something interesting, if you're talking about something to your guests or people are asking questions, shoot it my way and I'll do a short interview. And those are search terms that really help come up and help us get more people on that site. There's also an accommodations page, which links through to each one of our hotels or VRBOs or Vacasa residence booking engines so that we can measure exactly what's coming through there. So it's been a long labor, but it's live.
Laura, did you say it was visitgigharborwa.com?
Yes, and there's a password protected piece over it right now. So if you type it in right now.
I see. Okay, because I'm like, yeah, there's a password thing going on there.
Yeah, I'm just making a few tweaks behind the scenes on fonts and presentation, but
cool. So you're saying we don't have many guides left that Gig Harbor Local just did?
We have 4 boxes.
Right. Okay, so that's. Why don't we just ask Julie how many she has? Because like the other didn't have some, I just asked her and she brought some to me. So why don't we find out how many she has? Right.
I will. We've already gone back and forth. I asked for 15 boxes allocated to the city, and she said that was too many, and they already had places that they needed to be. So, but okay. I know the chamber also is going through them more rapidly than they're distributing. So I just have concerns about the total amount and if we're going to make it through the year. And I want to also allocate that amount out so it'll last through our down months too.
Yeah, that's too bad because we used to print a lot more than they did print this year, and it doesn't carry us through December 31st. It's supposed to carry us a lot longer.
But these are our busiest months too. So let's remember that. That's why we're going through a lot more, right? I mean, anyway, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know why we don't know how many she produced. How?
Well, because we didn't have a contract with them, so they didn't have to tell us.
Okay, well, but we're going to have one. At least we have one. So I'm very grateful for that. You know what I mean? And according to her, everything in that is also on their a website link that we can use too. So I don't know. I feel like
I would prefer to have traffic go to our website rather than the Lake Media website, just because that's a measured amount. So this puts us in a hard position because this has consistently been the city's publication that we've had editorial control of for many, many years. And now we have none. There's misinformation that I've found in there. I'm not super happy about that, but again, they're a for-profit business and they can choose to do what they want. They likely will for years to come, and it will be an unofficial visitor's guide. So there will likely be 2 copies. And that creates a real issue in that there's going to be information out there that we don't.
Anything.
Sorry, Stu? I couldn't hear you.
So I'm very
I'm really disappointed with what happened too. I mean, this was basically hijacked from the city's visitor's guide, from us having any control. And a lot of things, they basically sold at, if you had your name in there, you had to pay to have your name in there as a business, I heard. And it should not have been hijacked from the city. So it's,
well, I'll just make a comment here for the benefit of those who may not be aware, but we do a community digest every year as well. And we offered to partner with the chamber or with the city because we have all the resource. We do our own design, we do our own printing, and I'm sure that there could be a way that that's worked out. I mean, we did the visitor guide 7, 8 years ago, and we gave it to the city because you had a tourism department and we really didn't. So, I mean, we've done that book in the past, and that would be something that you may want to consider, Mayor, or you, Laura, because, you know, we do it and we do make a profit on our own magazine, but I'm sure we could do something that would be beneficial for tourism and for the city.
I have 2 thoughts on that, and I think that's a good idea. And I love partnering with the chamber on these things. As I understood it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that the profile is more for relocations, people who live here, and a little less.
Right. Yeah, our target market is businesses and individuals looking to relocate to Gig Harbor. That was the understanding that we left with the city, and we turned over the visitor element to the city marketing department to put together your own publication that met your needs. But I mean, we used to do both. So I certainly don't think that's out of reason to think that you couldn't do that again.
I think there's a couple options to consider about how it looks moving forward. We just kind of have to give up that the content so that we wrote in-house and contributed in 2020 is now being recycled again and again by an external company that we don't have control over. So it is frustrating because I want to make sure that the information that out there is correct and also serving our goals as in our total marketing strategy plan. If we hand the reins to somebody else, it doesn't necessarily fit what our marketing narrative is. It falls under theirs. And so it's a long-term concern. I have a few ideas about how to perhaps streamline how we go out, where this gets distributed, how it gets produced, and what we look at for annual sponsorships for events, publications, other things, so that we're distributing and getting it in the hands of the people that we need to. For example, like media may not think it's very important to be at the airport or on ferries, but we as a city do. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at how to fund it. We're going to take a look at how to produce it, and maybe rely less on a third party media company to produce it. I am open to suggestions. I'm open to conversations. Everything is being reviewed at this point to make sure that we're operating efficiently and meeting our goals, essentially. And
it'll be interesting to see the digital that you've just been working so hard on, the digital version. That's
ideally a lot of that content that we produce through the year to make it new and not a stagnant website can be recycled into some kind of guide that we put forward that's a little bit more personal too. I've had a lot of great conversations with Dean Burke at Travel Tacoma about their vision for an upcoming visitor's guide and what they think people really interact with on the content side. And I think we can do a little bit better.
Okay. So press release.
An opportunity for growth.
Right. And go on to the press release.
Oh, sure. Let's see, we have, I'm sorry, that banner, that bullet point should have been retitled. For Summer Sounds and Movies in the Park, next year we'll take a look at the graphic design redo. There's no art files for the old logos, so our hands are kind of forced in that. But that was supposed to be under press releases for Summer Sounds. I do have a press release in the works for our LTAC grants, which will go out tomorrow now that we've had some clarification today. That will go out on all social media platforms, to media, to our lists, and to our community leaders as well. So we're going to try to publicize that as best we can. Oh yeah, Stephanie, it goes to you. Absolutely, girl, you're on the list. You're at the top. So we'll put that forward and hopefully start that up. We have 6 weeks for an application window rather than a month like we did last time. So we've increased that. I will be here as a resource for anybody that applies. They can send me their application ahead of time. I will review it with them and tell them where it's strong and where it's not and where it falls under our parameters for funding, so that everything's that's presented to LTAC is a viable funding opportunity. So just kind of taking a page out of the CURB program and operating as a Sherpa to everyone that applies there to make sure that they fall under what we can fund, and we put forward opportunities for you that you can consider without having to wonder if they fall under the right categories. So.
Okay, 75th anniversary, we're over our
all
hour.
Done. So all done. That's already passed.
Okay.
We just have a new brochure production schedule for 2022 as I go through a lot of the things that have been outdated and have old information on them. The NetShed brochure, for example, has information from 2015. Our golf promotions are also 2015. So just taking a look at everything and trying to update them and make sure that we've got new copies. If you have any specific requests for brochures that you would like to see, let me know. If you have any big brochure printing needs, let me know, and we can also put forward our, a print request through Cascade Print Media for a bulk amount and try to get a negotiated rate for our partners as well. So that's everything there. Stephanie, you have your hand up still. Do you have a question?
I have it up again. I just had a thought that I don't know if this applies to, I mean, it applies to the grant applications, but it would specifically apply to any organization or entity that's applying that is not a nonprofit. I don't know the answer to this, but maybe Eric does. I would assume that if they received funds from LTAC, they would have to claim it as income for their business. Because like a nonprofit can receive grants and gifts with no problem, but a for-profit entity might have to be, there might have to be an asterisk or something that says if you're a for-profit, you're obviously going to probably have to pay tax on this money. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's an important point for anybody that might be applying that is a for-profit.
I will ask Eric that and follow-up questions. It's an important point. I wonder about the applicability of taxing tax. Mm-hmm. So is it free from that?
I would suggest they talk to their tax person.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It's kind of their own. It's not. We don't audit them.
Yep.
On their federal tax.
Right.
It's up to them. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Up next, we have, let's see, upcoming press coverage. So 1889 Magazine is running a piece on the Gig Harbor as a weekend getaway for their August-September issue, which will be out shortly. I just followed up with their digital people to submit images for that. So that'll be a digital and print piece. We also have a freelance journalist from the national side of things coming in, Cheney Quack, who was someone I worked with in a past agency life, who is coming down to Seattle, and then also will make a trip down to Gig Harbor. So we're excited for that and excited to see where his coverage comes out.
Laura, can you just say again, I couldn't quite hear what you said. So what is this Cheney Quack going to be doing?
The visiting journalist. So essentially a press visit to Gig Harbor. And dates TBD. I know he'll be here throughout, I think, the next few weeks. So whatever fits in with his schedule, he's going to come down. We're going to do a day.
Cool.
So I'll make sure to have equal representation for all of Gig Harbor's terms. So that, and I know we're running a little long here, and so I may add this just to the next agenda. And in the interest of time too, if anyone would like to reach out for a quick overview of where C-Sound is performing, I would love to walk you through for your specific organization. But maybe I'll just move that to the next agenda and we can take an in-depth look in early September.
Stephanie, did you have another question? Your hand's still up.
Oh yeah, hand up, hand down, wherever. It doesn't just automatically go down when you when you ask the question. No, I do have one thought was just regarding the C-Sound, because I'm doing a zip code report for Downtown Waterfront Alliance, and they're doing their parking report and zip code report from this last week. So it'd be interesting to compare notes on those two things to see if they actually are mirroring each other or completely disparate. So
absolutely, and I can run a report for you if you want me to send it over.
Okay, right. I'll let you know the date parameters, and then because that'll be the same date that Downtown Waterfront Alliance is doing for all of their reporting for parking stuff. So cool, thanks.
So we were thinking instead of having 2 meetings in September, because we would have to if we have this September meeting that we show at September 9th, we'd have to have a special meeting because we're going to be deciding on the grants. And we've kind of gone over a time frame where the grants. Do you want to explain that time frame where we might just have the meeting 2 weeks later where we decide?
Sure. Let me pull up that. Hold on. Let me make sure I get it right.
Sue, you're bouncing around. Are you on a ball? You're bouncing around.
Okay, here are my dates right now. We have the announcement out in the application window open on August 13th. September 27th is the deadline for applications. So October 7th would be our special meeting to review 2022 LTAC grant applications. So that would be shifting us forward a week, canceling our October 14th meeting and shifting that forward to October 7th for review. The reason behind that is that council would review the tourism budget on October 18th and 19th. So we need that approved and time enough to put together the total budgeted amounts before October 18th and 19th. And I think also just put together the packet there. So that's our idea. So our September meeting would stay. The October meeting would move forward a week.
Okay. All right, so that's what we'll probably try to do. So that would be on the 7th of October instead of a week or two later.
I'll send out an update for everybody on that so that we make good use of your time.
Right. And we've already lined up all of you where we're going to, we're going to let you look at, we're going to get the applications to you 2 to 3 days before that meeting so that you'll have time to review it.
Can we get a week, not days? Did you say 2 to 3 days?
Well, we wanted to keep the application window open for 6 weeks. So that gives us to September 27th, which means you have from September the 30th through the 7th to review. So that's almost a week.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought he said 2 to 3 days. That was our concern last time was the number of I mean, we had them the day before.
Right. You're right. I did say 2 or 3 days because so I did. One thing is we're telling people that they have 6 weeks to ask Laura questions, but they can't turn it in. And then we tell them, oh, you did this wrong, and have them go back and fix it and come back again. We're not going to do that. They have 6 weeks to clarify all their questions. And then when they turn it in on the 27th, that's it. When you turn in applications, everyone doesn't go back and say, well, you did it wrong when you had the whole time. So Laura needs a couple of days at least to review the applications and kick something out if it's not even appropriate. So there's some internal time there.
So some grant programs give people the opportunity to do a preview. So maybe if they want to have Laura review it, couldn't they do that the week before and make that
time? They can do that anytime in the 6 weeks. They can get in touch with me anytime, ask questions prior to putting it forward, put it forward and say, hey, will you review this, get feedback and resubmit, but they cannot submit after September 27th. That's the drop deadline. No ifs, ands, but firm deadline, but they can ask me anytime in that 6 weeks.
Yeah. Right. But what I'm hearing Kit say is that if you find some issue, then you can go back to them and say, oh, you got to fix this. So that I'm just.
Yeah, but you have to, if you think if you think there's an issue, you have to reach out to us first. Like Laura's put on the application review is available via communications at Gig Harbor anytime prior to Friday, the 24th, which is great. So
which gives me that weekend to review and say, sorry, man, no, this isn't. Go ahead, Sue. Yeah.
Would you be the only person that is Josh available to do any of that? Are you the only person that would be able to?
I mean, just on a time allocation, I'm happy. I'm the one who's allocated to do it. I'm happy to pass it by Josh if he has the time, but typically.
Okay, I'm just saying time-wise, that sounds like that could be cumbersome. But speaking of time, I have to go, but thank you for including me. And yeah, I don't know if you heard, I had my little 2-month-old granddaughter on an ergo. That's
okay, I wondered what you were doing. Like, boy, you had a lot of coffee.
Not that I had to go to the bathroom. No. Sorry, you guys. Warren, very good to see you. Got to catch up. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Good clarification. All right. I know. I was like, wow, she's
got a lot of energy.
Yeah, she's a busy lady. Yeah.
But that makes sense.
I do have a request though that as we are moving forward with the grant program, that the grant information actually gets posted on the LTAC Advisory Committee webpage, not just on the Gig Harbor Go, but actually on that webpage, like here's the deadline, here's the window of time when applications are going to be available, because it sent a lot of people to that page, but there's absolutely nothing about the grant program on that particular page. So it would be really helpful to have that info there.
Josh, is there, I think there is a link to apply here for 2021 grants, and then we update that link on that LTAC page, correct?
There's a link on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee page that takes you to a page on lodging taxes, and that has the grant.
Laura, I've got to run too. I'm sorry. I'm running up against another meeting. But
that's right.
Thank you guys.
Adjourn
okay, I think it's time to make a motion to adjourn, yes?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to put the appropriate information on the web page without having to go through 3 links, but apparently that's not on the table. So I'm going to, say that we can discuss that another time.
Stephanie, when we release the grant, I'll put it on the website, and I will contact you and let you know where it is, and you can tell me how you want it, and I can make it work.
Yeah,
okay.
You don't have to make a motion for that. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Okay, we have a motion from Jenny, yes?
Motion.
Jenny,
motion.
second.
Yep.
Or Stephanie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks all so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Laura,
See the website, Laura.
I've got some fun news, so I'll give you a call.
Yes, please do. Okay.